Thank you for joining us on this wonderful day. It's not just any regular day, but today is International Men's Day. And what a better way to celebrate this day by talking about or discussing issues that are in the lives of men and boys, and also as a way to impact the men and boys in the society. What do you understand by the term well-being?
Thank you for the question, Miles. I would describe well-being as a state of mind. I would say that if someone is has a good well-being, or the general state of well-being is you're at peace, you have joy, that would reflect that maybe your spiritual life is on point, it would reflect that your psychological part of your life is on point, that your financial, social aspects of your life are going well. So the harmony of those things would lead to a state of well-being for the human being. Yeah.
Mr. David Mirionge, how can we make a positive difference to the well-being and lives of men and boys?
Thank you very much, Miles. Yes, my name is David. I work with Transform Nations, running the Man Enough program. I guess that's a very good question, because that is what we deal with. Especially for me, I deal with men. And of course, partly I deal with boys, but in Transform Nations, we have a program called Boys to Men that is now catered towards mentoring boys between the ages of 10 to 17. So how we can make a positive impact or difference in the lives of men and boys is that, number one, we need to get involved as men. As in, we normally say that masculinity is monkey see, monkey do. So, you need a monkey who's doing something so that now you can also learn. Yeah, so we need men to be available, especially in the lives of boys. Whenever we talk about boys mentorship or boys, things to do with boys, it's we need men to be involved there, because whenever we raise boys, we normally raise them with the sense of prevention. When I say prevention, that means that we don't want them to do some mistakes that many men have done ahead. So that's why we need men to be involved in terms of raising these boys, not just being a good example, but just also getting involved in what they do in their day-to-day activities. I'll give you an example. There's a time we were doing Boys to Men years ago, and this man just came. He was a pilot, and just came and talked about his story, how he began his life as a pilot, the dreams he had as a pilot. Then after that, he now signed up for the pilot profession. And one of the boys who was listening to his story said, I actually want to be a pilot. And just through that story, he worked hard, got the good grades, and then he became a pilot. And later on, when that pilot was in Kenya Airways, they were just walking from an aeroplane, now going in to relax. I think they were just flown from somewhere. That boy recognized that pilot and said, hey, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I heard your story, and your story really inspired me to actually become this pilot, and I want to say thank you. So you can imagine the reaction of the pilot. Yeah, he was very, very excited. And so I think the first thing that needs to be done in terms of making a positive impact is that we need men to be available. They should be available in terms of them coming in, sharing, even just sharing their story, or just being available to just listen to what the boy is going through. And that way now, there's a way there will be a very big difference in the lives of boys and also of men as well. Yeah.
Let me ask a general question. How many charities do you know? And more so, how many have you noticed that there are very few charities that are taking place in the society that are focusing on the well-being of men and boys? How can we raise awareness for funds for charities supporting men and boys? To you, Mr. Chris David.
Thank you so much. Just to correct that, my name is Chris Gweth.
Sorry.
Yeah, David is my colleague here.
Okay.
Oh, an artist. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and actually, just maybe to get back to what David was answering, I think also in trying to make contribution to helping men, I think we need to look at the society as a whole, and then look for the loop that has put men where they are, and then we target a particular coup that will be able to have a ripple effect. For example, you look at the family or the community. If we talk to fathers, empower fathers mentally and socially, they'll be able to in turn affect their families positively, their children, and that will also be able to enhance, the general community or social well-being. And then about the organizations empowering men, I don't think there are many. I personally just know Transform Nations where I work, and just another program that I know that talks about manhood and fatherhood is Papa Bear. It's basically something I'm following, a new program. But there are very few, and I think that's because of the context where we are. I think in our context, our cultural context, a man sorts himself out, and then the focus is on the girl child. And I think also from the influence of the outside, the Western infiltration into our culture, we've been focusing more on girl child and accepting it without question. So that makes the boy and the man more left out and focus more on the girl. And I think now that the conversations have begun with Transform Nations and other organizations, and now that we are beginning to realize that we need men to also be engaged, we can keep that focus. We can keep talking about it, get to the media, get to the communities, churches, and just make sure that people see the need for men to be heard and for men's issues to be addressed. And also, of course, just the attacking the cultural aspects that might be preventive or an impediment to that kind of effort. Then you can be able to raise more awareness. I think once the awareness is raised, it might be practical or easier to raise funds or maybe to build new organizations towards that. Yeah.
Mr. David, how can we as a society promote a positive conversation about men, manhood, and masculinity?
That's a very detailed question. How do we promote conversations about men, masculinity, manhood?
Yeah, positively.
Yeah. All right. I guess is to have the right people involved. I think we need people who have a burden and a passion about seeing how they can help promote the positive agenda of masculinity. So we have to actually have them involved in talking about their story, and they can actually, a good case is just starting by starting an organization. If you can't start an organization, see how you can start a talk on social media, or even start where you are by seeing how you can actually, for example, I remember this man who did Man Enough and said, I see there are some few young men or boys in my community who are not doing well. So let me just take them through this Boys to Men program, and just let me sit down with them and just talk to them about masculinity. So starting where you are as a man, starting where you are at and seeing how you can actually partner with other people to make sure that this word comes out. But if you can't partner with someone, just start by mentoring. But I remember that there's a time I did my Man Enough years ago, 2013, and I just look at my estate that time. I was living in Buruburu, And I saw a few, let me say, boys who were 7 years, 8 years old, and they were just there. They were just hanging out, nothing out. And I just took them. And for one day, I just start with them, and then just had a conversation and asked them, okay, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, start conversations. And with time, you find that this boy started opening up. And with time, I knew how to actually start dealing with their issues. So it's to see how do you start where you are at in terms of tackling this problem, or actually starting a conversation. And with time, you'll find that it grows. But if a man is in that space whereby they can actually, let's say, start a social media page and talk about this thing, start it. Do whatever is within your power, as opposed to just waiting to see how it will go, or waiting for this TV to come and look for you so that you can start where you are first. And with time, the conversation grows, and it will actually reach the right publics and the right channels to so that influence can be felt between men and women. Let me talk about something that I've just remembered as I was sharing this. I think I know there's a responsibility for us as men to start where we are at, but also I guess there's also a very big responsibility with leaders. I think when you reach a leadership position, there's more influence that you can carry. So, for example, seeing how pastors, for example, with churches, like when I'm talking about pastors, Man Enough has actually spread through many, many churches. And it's because these pastors have seen there's a problem with our men. So, because of the place where they are at, they have invited us to see how we can start this program with their men. We've had people who are corporate leaders, some who are branch managers, just leaders there. And they say, okay, by the way, I can see that my organization, my staff, the male staff is not doing so well. So why don't I call Simon Bevy? Why don't I call this man or this professional to come and just talk to my men, so that they can change. There can be some ripple effect, So there's that place whereby for us as men, we need to start something wherever we are, if we have a burden or if we see a problem. But also I think there's a place whereby leaders of certain either groups or organizations have more, let me say, more clout, more influence in terms of starting something that can actually help the men they lead in their respective spaces. So that is just my 2 cents about how we can start a conversation with men and masculinity, and just manhood, and also about masculinity. And I think also just talking about crying, that is something we addressed in Man Enough. Of course, we say that men should not cry. You should cry rather, but they should not cry in public. You don't need to cry in public. You just stand there and then you start crying. No, but at least cry in privacy, in confidence, or with another man, of course. Because of course, again, I said men, we are very solitary, and Chris also said that we as men need a safe space. I think that is a very important thing. We need a safe space whereby we can talk about our issues as men, and just be real with each other, and also if need be cry, but we don't advocate for men to cry in public. I think there's a notion whereby women now, okay, there's a woman who heard about us talking about men crying and said, I think he posted on social media and said, hey, by the way, in Kiswahili now, if men si kama wanaume wanalia, then should si mbona waliangi in public. As in, wanafaa kuanalia in public, pia sisi tuone, and at least ndio wanalianga, So in just paraphrase in English, because maybe there's someone who may not understand Kiswahili, he was just saying that, what, you guys are saying that men should cry, then we should expect them to start crying, in public. And they should start crying so that at least we as women know that they're crying. No, it should not be that way, of course. It should be in the confidence and the privacy of a group of men or a man who they can confide in, so that at least they get to actually express what they feel. And even if it's through crying, let it be like that, but let it not be in public. Yeah, that's my emphasis.
All right.
Okay, I'd like to add something to that about crying and everything. First, let me start with social media. If we start the conversation, the main thing is just starting. If there's this saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
Yep.
Yeah. There's this guy on Twitter, I'm sure some of you know him. His name is Amerix. He does a hashtag called Masculinity Saturday. Yeah, I don't want to say, let me just say this as a disclaimer. I might not agree with everything he says, but he gets the conversation going, and people agree that, and people get to discuss whether he says something right or not, whether you agree with him or not. The conversation has already started. So starting is the main thing. I just wanted to emphasize on that. Also on crying, I think apart from crying, because as much as crying is important, I think men should also be able to deal with their emotions, because you might cry but not have dealt with your emotions. You might cry, you might laugh, maybe you're feigning the crying just to show people that you have felt something. But if you haven't dealt with it and understood why you're feeling the way you're feeling and how you will deal with that issue that has made you feel that way moving forward, you will not have solved the problem. So I think to add on to crying, deal with the emotion. If you're angry, know why you're angry and why, and what you can do to improve on how you deal with your anger, or whether it's your sadness or the happy times, and keeping those happy memories at bay, so that you can be able to, okay, at bay is not the right phrase, but keeping them close so that you're able to access them. So just adding to crying, deal with the emotions, unpack emotions, understand why you are the way you are and why you do what you do, and be very honest with yourself as a man. Yeah.
Short one. The notion that people think is when you cry you have to tear. There's a difference. There's crying, there's tearing. Crying doesn't necessarily mean that you have to shed your tears. Crying is letting your emotions out, like releasing whatever that's burdening you out. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like shed a tear or wail, you know. That's the bad part. But anyway, I mean, you can shed a tear, you can cry, but as long as you're doing it in confidence of someone else or in the confidence of your own confines to help you release the anger or the unforeseen emotions that you have that are burdening you up, it's going to be a fair deal, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think also in beginning the conversations, I think you also need to involve women. I'm still insisting on this because I think women are part of us. I think a woman remains a man's wonder. You know, just trying to understand this being. You know, there's this concept I've been seeing on social media about that gender, the she gender. You know, this gender that you talked to a snake. This gender. Yeah, I think I'm still trying to understand women. And I think involving women in this masculinity or conversation is very important, because I think the old cultural ideas of masculinity that we are trying to rework, some of our women also have those ones as the baseline for understanding a man. So if she continues that way and the man is trying to change it, it becomes a counter effort. So I think involving them and then helping them know that this is what you're trying to achieve, it's going to go a long way. And also just to mention in the context of a family, I think women naturally, sometimes subconsciously, when they don't respect the husband, they tend to prevent the son from identifying with the husband. So I think it's important also for women to know that in as much as your husband might not be a very good husband, but he could be a good father. And in that case, you should encourage your son to identify with the father, because some women prevent their sons from getting to the father, and then the son grows up with a bit of identity challenges. So I think also understanding all these aspects will be able to help in developing the new concept of masculinity identity. Yeah.
You can't spell the word she without he. You can't spell the word her without he. You can't spell the word lady without lad. I mean, come on, guys. You get I guess that's all for me. So I think ladies should be part of this conversation. Not that we're trying to make us we're not trying to like take their place, in terms of them being empowered. We just want to also be heard, because we've been put down for too long and it's not fair. Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, I guess it's true. We need all stakeholders when it comes to matters of the boy child and masculinity, because when you look at the issues that the men go through, it ultimately affects every other person. it could be the women. In fact, if you ask a woman, 90% of the challenges women are facing are actually caused by men, or there's a man inside that has actually influenced the problem there. So that's why we need all the stakeholders to be involved in terms of bringing the man up, and the development of masculinity. If it becomes a man-only affair, then it will actually remain a man-only affair. Then there will not be much. Let me say this: there will be not much traction and productivity if the men themselves actually tend to actually just involve themselves in handling their own issues, and the women are not involved. And it's interesting, it's the vice versa as well, whereby also when it comes to matters of women, also the men need to be involved in terms of them understanding how to actually bring up their women, or actually to help the women to become the women that God designed them to be. So it actually needs to be an intertwine, if there's such a word as intertwinement of both genders just helping each other out. When the other one is down, the other one picks him up, should be the other way, and especially for the men.
That was a very nice conversation. I believe our viewers have learned something new and will put into practice to better the lives of men and boys out there. There is a Chinese proverb that says, if you are planning for a year, grow rice. If you are planning for 20 years, grow trees. And if you are planning for centuries, grow men. Thank you for this conversation, gentlemen. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Be blessed.